just waiting for you.
Hey everyone, Victor Lucia here, founder and president of the Brooklyn Fishing Club. This episode is brought to you by The Lost Lady, a nautical rum bar located at 171 Avenue C between 10th and 11th Street, serving up killer tacos, killer drinks, food specials 7 days a week. The kitchen is open late. They've got one of the best burgers I've ever tasted, and you can follow them at The Lost Lady NYC. Tonight, we are joined by a very special guest. His name is Eugene Evans. He's a certified fisheries professional with the American Fisheries Society. He's also a seafood processing subject matter expert and a licensed 100-ton captain. Eugene, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
How you doing?
All right.
Let's hear a little bit about how you got into this profession.
All right. So a very long time ago, I came out of college. I was a fisheries observer as a contractor with the National Marine Fisheries Service. Through presidential changes at the time, the budget was severely cut. So I quit before I got laid off because there was no money in the budget to work. I was an environmental scientist for a short time, and then I got into regulatory food safety. And I've been in regulatory food safety for approximately 19 years, over which time my just having a seafood background has allowed me to, gain expertise in the seafood safety realm. And, that's where I was able to utilize my skills from a seafood perspective in the regulatory food safety world, because it's a niche that not a lot of people truly understand, because there's a very large dichotomy between fishing and seafood safety. And, people go fishing and they really think they're just going fishing for fish to catch fish. And that's fine if you're doing catch and release. But if I'm going fishing to take fish home to eat, you're now fishing for food. And the way you handle food, once that fish goes in the bucket or in your cooler or whatever you put it in, it's now food. And as such, it really needs to be treated that way. And for whatever reason, if you look at historically, you look at all of the stories of your fathers and, people what said about your grandfathers and everybody that you speak to, it's sort of like this macho environment where we're going to leave fish out and we're going to catch fish all day and leave them in barrels in 100-degree heat. And the one thing that struck me as odd is, I would talk to my grandmother, and she wasn't into fishing. And she only liked a certain few species of fish that were caught. But she used to talk to me about the waste and what was in the freezer, and it would sit in the freezer and this and that, and you could only eat so much. And the neighbors would come over for fish, and when my grandfather would come home and my father and my uncle would come home with fish, it was like everybody was getting fish, but at the same token, the waste that was there. And when over the years, as I progressed in my profession, you start seeing how people are fishing on the boat. Party boats, private boats, and you see how people go out fishing and really mishandle fish. So you look at fish and you say, well, seafood is, just fish in general, or you're pretty much one of the most delicate proteins that are out there. But yet it gets mishandled the most out of any protein out there. And people go fishing. There's people who go fishing today. They go out fishing, and it's 100 degrees outside. And they don't have ice. They don't have a bucket. And people are still going back to the burlap bags. And, those burlap bags, that's fine if you're out and, fishing somewhere in California and it's 50 degrees outside and the water is barely 50 degrees. And, you might be able to get away with that. But, the old school mentality really is hurting the modern day fishermen and fisherwomen.
Let's speak more on that old school mentality. What do you mean by that? The
old school mentality of just throw fish in a bucket and keep fishing and just, we'll just change the water. And, if you're fishing and the water is 70 degrees, realistically, you want your fish pretty much hovering above 32. And you want to get it as cold as you can, as fast as you can, under the most sanitary conditions. And for a large part, that's and it's not taking place as much as it should be. I would say 70-80% of the people that are fishing on any given day are mishandling their fish, maybe more. And there's a lot of waste, needless waste. Or put it this way, let's just say if people are eating the fish, how many people don't like fish? And is it because they don't like the flavor of fish, or do they not like fish that's pretty much close to being spoiled?
Well, how much time have you spent on like wreck boats and personally witnessed people wasting fish?
I've spent most of my life. I think the first time I actually set foot on a party boat, I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And I really didn't understand as much as I did until I got into the food safety world, where I really started to take a closer look and have a deeper understanding of what was really going on. And you see people going out there and their fish going on the fillet table, it's already mush. And you look at it and you say, like, how you could enjoy it. First of all, eating that it's got to be a stretch in and of itself, and enjoying it, and anybody else enjoying it, I mean, you're gonna have to put so much seasoning on that fish to mask the horrible flavor that you have, that you wonder why so many people out there really don't like fish. And it's sad, because it's I'll eat pretty much any fish out there if it was handled correctly and processed correctly. I mean, I don't know of a bad tasting fish. I mean, other than having a fish that's, might be loaded with bones and all you're doing is picking bones out of your mouth. But even still, the fish itself still tastes good. And there's no reason why anybody should be going out there fishing today and not coming home with the highest quality fish they possibly can. Ice is cheap. Now, we could get into the different types of ice, the different types of ice crystals that you're going to get. There's a lot of different things once you start getting into it that could extend let's just say, the shelf life of that fish.
Let's say you're going porgy fishing.
Okay.
At a Sheepshead Bay.
Okay.
Usually the party boats will give you a bucket to throw your stuff in. If you're experienced and you've been out there a lot, you'll bring your own cooler with ice.
Right.
What's the best way to keep a porgy fresh until you get it home, and even until you get it to the kitchen?
What I would say is,
just as an example.
Okay, so me personally, when I fish and I'm fishing for myself, I might, let's just say if you're out there fishing and let's just say you're not taking care of the fish the way you should be, and we have equal fishing skill, we might over the course of a day we could catch the same number of fish. I might catch 10 to 15% less because I'll spend more time caring for that fish when it comes off the hook. So instead of throwing it on in a bucket and hoping running, just baiting up and jumping back in the water, I'm going to spend a little more time.
Yeah.
So for me, let's just say if I was porgy fishing, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is break the gills. Okay. Now,
how do you do that?
I would porgies
take them and snap it forward.
Well, the gill arches are pretty weak, so you can stick your fingers in, grab the gill arches on both sides, rip them. Okay, just rip them out. And now I would put it in a bucket of water, and that bucket of water you're going to want to be changed. That's a bucket of water that you're going to want to change frequently.
So you're not going to cut that membrane at all.
No, I would just rip the gills.
Make sure everyone is ripped.
Yeah, you're gonna rip them and
how long will the fish take to die after you do that? Because a lot of people, some people get concerned about fish feeling pain and this and that, and some people think if you just cut that artery, they're going to die really quickly. How do you think it's similar?
Put it this way: if somebody is really that worried about it, I mean, the fish is once the fish bleeds out, a small fish like that's going to bleed out in probably, not even a minute. Yeah. And put it this way, what's the fish going to feel? It's not like you're cutting into something, you're just breaking the gill arches. So, from a pain perspective, I'm not an ichthyologist that studies pain, But realistically, I mean, when you look at the studies that are out there, when people are cutting the gills on fish and bleeding them in commercial environment, aquaculture level environments, it's a very peaceful, calm way to bleed out a fish.
And honor the fish.
Yeah. So, I mean,
you don't want it to suffer, you know?
Right. So ideally, if you have a bucket of water with ice in it, okay, because the ice is going to allow that the fish to start pumping the blood faster because it's colder. So now the heart's going to pump that blood out. And you're going to get as much blood as you possibly can out. And you want to do that right away. Okay, I like to do that. Put it in water. Okay, and you know, another thing too is you could start looking at, there's various different antimicrobials to start destroying spoilage microorganisms on the surface of the fish that are existing on the slime layer. So, I mean, you could put hydrogen peroxide in the water. Okay.
Really?
I wouldn't be putting it directly on the flesh.
How much? Like, so you're saying if you have a bucket of porgies, you can put like a.
What I would do is for me personally, what I would do is if I had just say like a 5-gallon bucket, and I would put, let's just say you fill it up with water, put some ice. I would pour some pour like half a bottle of hydrogen peroxide.
Half a bottle.
Sure.
Like one of
the regular bottles that you would get in the store. And what that's going to do is it's going to help reduce spoilage microorganisms on the surface of the fish. You could also it helps out with pathogens too, because if the studies have indicated that 50% of raw fish do carry levels of Listeria monocytogenes and other pathogens on the surface.
And that's in every ocean?
That's anywhere. Okay. Yeah. So, some areas you might not have any, some areas you might have more. But in any case, that for me personally, it's not a total lethality per se. I mean, there's ways that you could get logarithmic levels of reduction. But on the boat, on just what you're doing there, just that I like to do. Let it bleed out, and then take it out of that. Okay, you could rinse it off, have some clean water, rinse it off, and now put it in an ice slurry. Okay, in your cooler in an ice slurry. That's going to be the best way of doing that. Okay, and what I like to do is the best ice that you could use. See, flake ice, crushed ice, big hunks of ice. What that does is that's actually going to have the sharp edges and the big pieces are going to bounce around, especially when you're on deck and the boat's rocking. What that's going to do is it's going to pound into the surface of the skin of the fish. And you have microscopic incisions, which is going to allow microorganisms to penetrate that fish. Okay, so now bleeding the fish, you're going to allow that fish to go into and out of rigor mortis as fast as you can. And the temperature drop that you're going to get on the ice, you want to get that fish down below 40 degrees. So ideally you want it between 32 and 40. You really don't want it to start. We'll get into freezing a little bit later, because dropping below that for a long period of time, you start destroying quality rapidly. I mean rapidly if you start messing around, okay, when getting below 32 and not doing it correctly. But just on the boat, you want to get it cold. So now your fish is cold. Keep it straight. Don't let it curl up. You know what I mean? Because that's another thing. You don't want to fillet a fish in rigor mortis. Okay? And that's what I like to do. Okay? So I like to have... So now I know that those fish are going to be in prime condition. Okay? And ideally at that point... Okay, so if I was going to now ask a mate on a boat to fillet my fish, okay, what I would suggest you do is the cutting board that's on the boat being used to cut bait, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most likely being used to cut
for everything else. Okay. So what I would do is, if you ask come on the boat, just peroxide is cheap. Okay. Before anybody cuts any fish on a boat, okay, go up to your mate, tip your mate, okay, and pour peroxide on the cutting board for him or her.
That's
okay? And ideally, you want to scrub the cutting board down, clean it, rinse it, sanitize it.
Before the hydrogen.
But you want to scrub it down and clean it, but pour some hydrogen peroxide on the board. Get a lethality of pathogens. You just had bait that was sitting there all day long.
That God knows how long it's been sitting.
It's been sitting there anyway. Growing. I mean, because the cutting board becomes a petri dish.
There. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, ideally, too, before you come out fishing, clean, rinse, and sanitize your cooler. Okay? So scrub your cooler down, soap and water, rinse it off. I mean, in apartments, a lot of times you're going to probably be doing it in a bathtub.
Yeah.
Okay? And I've done it for years.
And emptying it off my fire escape. Yeah.
Well, just pour it down the drain.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, it's
Now
easier.
what you do is what I do then is get a gallon of water after you're done. Warm water. Pour in 1 capful of plain Clorox. Wipe the surface of your entire cooler down with it and let it air dry.
How long?
It depends until it air dries. The key is
Okay.
letting it air dry.
Gotcha.
Okay, and what that's going to do, that's going to get a structured reduction of pathogens called sanitizing. So ideally, when you're dealing with a food contact surface, you want to get a 5-log, 99.999% reduction of pathogens of public health significance and other microorganisms. So cleaning with soap, breaking the surface tension, rinsing everything with fresh water in the bathtub for a cooler, let's just say, that's going to probably get you around 3-log 99.9. The other 2 logs are going to come from the use of a sanitizing solution for any potential pathogens or microorganisms that are there. So now, once that air dries, you have yourself a nice, clean cooler. Okay? So now, when you buy ice, okay, make sure it's good to get the bags at ice, or if you find some place like an ice facility that has clean ice, ideally it's good if you could get the small, tiny, like the little tiny balls of ice.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even seen those. We usually just go to gas stations and whatever they have, that's it.
Yeah, sometimes you got to get what you can get.
Yeah.
And some things are better than, and no ice, any ice is better than no ice. But, the softer and less edges on the ice cube itself, the better it's going to be.
Okay, so more spherical, the better.
Right, smaller, tiny.
Yeah.
Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to prevent impact. Okay, and what I like to do is do a slurry of ice. This way, you're going to allow you could throw fish in there. Okay, the fish are going to go in, and they're just going to rapidly cool. Okay, and that's basically what you. So looking at that, you're looking at the volume of ice that you have. You have to make sure you have enough ice. Okay, so if you're going to go out for the day, okay, what I tell people to do is have a bag of ice and get a good, really good heavy plastic bag. Tie that up tight. Keep the bag tight. Keep that in your cooler. Okay, then have other bags of ice that you have ripped apart. And you put the ice in the slurry, and now you put your fish in that. Okay, so now you have that bag that you kept sealed up. You need ice to go home with too. So looking at ice as a means of temperature reduction, if I had ice in a room, okay, with fish on it, in a sealed 32-degree room, which isn't going to exist anywhere on a boat, 10 pounds of ice per 100 pounds of fish, just based upon looking at the latent heat of fusion of the fish, you're going to get an 18-degree drop in flesh temperature before that ice turns into a liquid. Okay, so looking at that on a party boat with hot temperatures, sun radiation, hot deck, okay, realistically, I'm going out, and if I know I'm going to catch, 30, 40 pounds of fish per se, I'm going to be looking to go out there with a very large volume of ice. And people tell me, oh, you're crazy, you're bringing too much ice. You never have too much ice. Okay? Now, reserve ice to go home with. And and now once you have your fish filleted on a clean cutting board, bring your own bags. Okay? The bags that were stolen from the supermarket, okay, they're really not food grade bags and they're not clean. So if you bring bags, the best bags that I've seen, if you wanted to buy bags, the ones I've seen the best on a boat were the Uline bags, okay, the S12309. And those are long bags. You could put your fillets in there to take them home, and you tie a knot at the top tight. Now you have a handle to carry your fillets in, so you keep all the liquid, because you could hang it over and nothing would drain into the bag by accident. That's your best bag. Now, before we get into that, what you really want to do is, depends on how you're going to get your fish cleaned. The ideal way of cleaning fish is to properly eviscerate it first. Okay? Now, if you're going to have your fish filleted, okay, a skilled mate can fillet the fish without breaking anything into the stomach cavity. Okay? The minute you get digestive juices from the stomach on your flesh, okay, if you're not going to eat that fish, that fillet immediately, you're going to, now all of those digestive juices on the cutting board, anything else that goes on that cutting board, basically starting digestion. So ideally, you want to have a skilled mate fillet that fish without breaking the stomach cavity. If you might lose a little bit of flesh on the belly, but it's worth it so you don't destroy all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm gonna, some people like to have their porgies scaled and gutted. Okay. There's ways of ripping the belly bones out, but if you break the stomach along with it, you're just going to turn to mush. Okay, so proper scaling, it all depends. I mean, it all goes in sequence. But if I eviscerate properly, if you look underneath the spine, you're going to have like a red little line that goes under the spine. That's your kidney. That's metabolically active tissue. So you're going to want to have that line cut, and you want to rinse that out and scrape out that kidney section, because that's basically viscera that's going to start facilitating the digestion of your flesh. Okay, and
is that similar to the red bloodline on a
totally
stripper?
different.
Totally different.
Yeah, the bloodline that's
Gotcha.
flesh. This is inside, like right under the rib cage.
Okay,
underneath, you're going to see a certain fish.
So it's very close to the fillet that you're trying to get.
You're going to have your bones, and then in between the bones, you can have like a membrane, and you break that open, and you could scrape that out and rinse it out. That's what you want to do with that, making sure that none of the organs get torn. Okay.
So a lot of guys, they take what I would consider relatively good care of their catches on party boats and whatnot. At least the guys in the club, they'll come with ice, they'll come with a cooler and everything. But if you're not following all the steps that you're listing right now, what are some of the risks, and what are some of the probably nightmarish stories that you've seen or heard about while working in this profession?
Well, looking at it, I mean, you're definitely going to increase spoilage microorganisms, and spoilage microorganisms drastically decrease the length of time that you have to keep that fish in a refrigerator before it's rotten. So
even if it's vacuum sealed?
Vacuum sealing can make it worse, because now you introduce botulism into the equation.
Okay.
And botulism will kill you quickly if you don't handle it correctly.
In your time in this profession, have you heard of people dying of botulism from fish?
Sure. There's been a lot of issues about. I mean, it's not. Put it this way: it's more common in home anaerobically packaged products than commercially. So it's the person who's doing it without real knowledge. I mean, a lot of times,
it's like a wreck fisherman.
Somebody like that, or a lot of times you're going to get people where you have a lot of botulism issues right now, are in a lot of your Inuit communities in the in Alaska, where people would normally do various different types of processing of seafood products and maybe the intestines of an animal. And then instead of using the intestines of an animal they might not have been able to get when they did it inside of a plastic bag, and the plastic bag couldn't breathe, and now you had an anaerobic environment, and now several people in the village might get sick and die.
What about New York City? Have you experienced any cases of botulism here?
I mean, you're probably once in a while you're gonna have. I mean, I don't really like look for it per se, but I'm sure it happens, and it's unfortunate and pretty much needless, especially from a fishing community. And it's so easy to properly care for fish, even if you are going to vacuum package. So let's just say, if I took fish that it was properly filleted or improperly filleted, and I took it home. What's the temperature of your refrigerator?
I don't know.
Right, most people don't know.
I would say, I don't know, 60 degrees.
But if you have a 60-degree refrigerator,
I have no idea.
your milk's going to be gone in
I'm just
a
thinking
day.
of California. I want to be there in 60-degree weather. That's
So
why.
what I tell people to do is, first thing you really want to do, which nobody wants to do, move your refrigerator out. Take the cover off the back and vacuum all your coils. Okay? A properly cleaned refrigerator, you'll probably drop your temperature inside of your refrigerator 4 or 5 degrees without changing the setting, just by keeping the coils and everything in the back clean. Okay? Inside your refrigerator, take everything out of your refrigerator, okay? Clean, rinse, and sanitize it. Same thing in your freezer. Okay? So the air that's inside your refrigerator isn't blowing spoilage microorganisms all over the place. So now you come home with fish. Okay, me personally, I do vacuum seal. Okay? I have the experience and knowledge of how to do it correctly. Okay? Now, ideally, I tell people if you're going to vacuum seal fish and freeze it. Okay? Which now poses another problem because I went out and I got 50 pounds of fillets and I vacuum sealed it all and I threw it in the freezer at one shot. You might as well take it out of the freezer and throw it right in the garbage. Okay? If you're going, first of all, when you take your fish home, okay, you want to trim your bones out of the fillets. Make sure everything's clean. You don't have, make sure there's no, grime or anything that shouldn't be there. Okay. Me personally, I rinse my fillets off in fresh water.
People swear against that. I've heard so many captains say, "Do not rinse your fillets in fresh water. It ruins the meat." No,
it does ruin the meat if you don't pat it dry. Okay, rinse everything off with fresh water. Okay, so if I have millions of spoilage microorganisms on that fish, on the surface of that fish, and I don't rinse it off, is that fish really going to last long? No.
Do you want to rinse it with cold or hot?
No, you never rinse it with hot water. You always rinse it with the coldest water you possibly can.
Coldest water possible.
Okay, rinse it off.
Don't put any salt on it or anything. I've heard of that too.
You could, but that's if you're soaking a fish. If you want to freshen up the surface. But me personally, I'll rinse the fish off with fresh water and pat it dry with paper towels. Okay? I'll even go so far as putting the fish in the refrigerator in like a lasagna pan, just to rapidly dry the surface. Okay? Now, not for hours on end, just to get that residual moisture off the surface. Okay? Just a little bit. Now I put the fish in the vacuum sealer. Make sure your vacuum seal machine is properly cleaned and sanitized as well. So I vacuum seal the bags, and then what I do is I make sure my refrigerator is set at around 35, 36 degrees all the time. Okay? So you can't have issues in the refrigerator if, you jam pack it, stuff at the top might ice up. But that's more of an issue of maintaining proper airflow in your refrigerator than setting it too low. Okay? So 38 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be your critical temperature for controlling what's called non-proteolytic Clostridium botulinum. Okay? Now, people look at botulism, they think of canned foods, which is true. Okay? But you have two forms of, let's just say, botulism. One is proteolytic, which when the spores create a toxin, they gas off, they create a foul odor. There's an indicator that something is wrong. So generally, you're going to have some sort of an indicator there that I shouldn't eat this food. Okay? Now, if I have what's called non-proteolytic Clostridium botulinum, now what happens there is there's no off-gassing. There's no indicator that toxin formation might have taken place. You might have spoilage growth that may or may not stink. So 38 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be the temperature that controls the growth of non-proteolytic Clostridium botulinum. Now, having one barrier of temperature control, unless you have a chart recorder in your refrigerator monitoring temperatures, okay, which no one really has, you really only have one barrier, and that's not sufficient, okay? If I had time temperature indicators, these little stickers on the bag that could determine time temperature abuse conditions, and if they turn colors, if it turns red, that means that you might have botulinum toxin formation, then you throw the whole bag in the garbage. That's one thing. No one's going to do that at home. So what I tell people to do at home is make sure your refrigerator works. Get a calibrated thermometer, put it in your refrigerator, open the door, and see what temperature it says right quickly, okay? If it's not 38 degrees Fahrenheit, if you're going to vacuum seal at home, you have to get a pot with ice. Vacuum seal your fish, put it in a pot with ice, and leave it in the refrigerator. So the ice, is going to melt to 32. So you're going to keep the temperatures down. What I do then, okay, after I properly vacuum seal it, you put the name, write it on it with a magic marker, put the date, when, what the fish is. And what I like to do in the freezer, okay, you have what's called the critical freezing zone and the critical freezing rate. When looking at quality, because once you freeze the fish and you took steps to properly care for the fish getting to the freezer, okay, getting it home, doing everything right, now it's going in the freezer. From 32 degrees Fahrenheit down to 23 degrees Fahrenheit is your critical freezing zone. You want to get the temperature down through that zone as fast as possible, okay? Now, if I stay too long in that zone, what happens is the fresh water in the cells of the fish, okay, they start to make large, sharp ice crystals because the fresh water is going to freeze first at around 32. As they get down to 23, then the minerals are going to that and the salt inside the cell, that's going to start to harden up. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to get down through that temperature range as fast as you can and get somewhere below zeros, as far below zero as you can quickly. What that's going to do is the ice crystals that are going to form inside the cells are going to be small, round, and they're going to pack tightly. What they're not going to do is become large, sharp, and jagged, which would break the cell membranes. Okay, you want to keep the cell membranes intact. And this is why a lot of people who eat sushi, I don't like to freeze fish to kill parasites because it changes the texture of the flesh. That's because they didn't freeze it properly. If you freeze it, now freezing it properly is one thing. So what I like to do is I like to put one bag in at a time. If I have a couple bags of porgies, they're paper thin, they're gonna hard freeze in a half an hour. Okay, ideally you want to do this and you want to have it hard frozen. Okay, you want to get it hard frozen within less than 2 hours. Okay, so what I do, I put one bag in at a time, laying it flat. Okay, once the first bag hard freezes, put it down, get another bag in, and you just start doing it over the course of a couple hours. Okay, it takes a little extra time, but if your freezer temperatures, so if you have a good freezer that doesn't fluctuate, because fluctuations in the freezer, that could start the ice crystals from forming jagged edges as well. Okay, so now once it goes in the freezer and you have a good freezer and it stays hard frozen, okay, if you maintain sanitary conditions, you do everything the right way, you could keep that. I've had fish in the freezer for well over a year. And I took it out of the freezer and I cooked it up and it was perfectly fine. Okay, here's the other issue. Thawing the fish. I have to thaw the fish correctly. Okay? Now, ideally, the easiest way to thaw that fish, okay, you might be able to cut the bag depending on what you're doing. Okay, if I'm making a fish chowder, I cut that fish up, I cut the bag. Now, once you cut the bag, you now lose the botulism risk because there's no anaerobic environment. I could cut the fish frozen with a serrated knife, okay? Just throw it in the refrigerator, okay? Or throw it in a pot of chowder that I might be making and it'll soften up and break apart and you'll be fine. But for the most part, no one's doing that. Not much, okay? So take the vacuum package bag out of the freezer. Get a bowl and put it in the sink. Fill it with cold water. Put the bags inside. Put another bowl on top so it stays under the water. Now turn the water on, faucet just a drip, just to get a little bit of water going over. That's going to rapidly thaw that fish. Once the bag starts getting soft, okay, now you know that you've gone through your critical freezing zone coming up the other way. Okay, now you know that fish is above 32 because it's soft and it's pliable. The bag's pliable. Cut the bag, take it out of the bag, pat it dry, cut the bag immediately, stick it in the refrigerator. Okay, you've just properly thawed your fish. If you properly thaw your fish when it thaws, okay, you won't have a bag with a ton of water in it. If you have a bag with a ton of water in it after you thaw it, that means that you had bad quality fish to begin with that wasn't handled right. The cell membranes were damaged in the freezer, so now you released all that water, so it's going to be, your flavor is going to go out the window with it. Okay, big time. Okay, so now you have your fish. Okay, so now you could take that fish and you can cook it up however you want. Okay, and you just maintained high quality. Okay, now from a safety perspective, if you do everything right, it's still going to maintain safety. You're going to cook your fish, so any potential pathogens that could be there are going to be destroyed during the cooking process. Okay, and you just took something that had you inadequately handled, you'd probably open it up. It would probably stink. You'd probably make a meal. Okay, for some, generally, the people that always complain, okay, are the guys who, from what I've heard, are the guys who wanted to impress a girl. Oh, I brought her over the house and I made dinner and she wasn't too happy because the fish stunk and she was unhappy, or then you would speak to a girl. Oh yeah, this guy went on a date and we had this fish and it was terrible. And you laugh because you say that, well, I could sit there and say, well, had they did it right, they probably would have had a much better night that night. Okay? And what happens a lot of times is that person, that might have been the first time they've ever had a fish dinner at someone's house. Okay? A lot. It happens a lot. Now, you might meet somebody in their 20s and they've never had a fish dinner. Okay, they've avoided fish, or my mother didn't like fish, or my father didn't like fish, and they never had fish. Now they go out with some guy who fishes, and now they get turned off to fish because every story they heard about fish tasting terrible and stinking now magically came true for no reason. Okay, so that's something that could be avoided. Okay, and that's generally where those problems take place. You hear it all the time. Okay, so how do we get around that and try to educate the fishing community, the entire fishing community? Okay, so I tell people when I'm on the boat, I try to educate as many people as I possibly can. People think you're crazy with bottles of peroxide, and if I'm working on a boat and I'm scrubbing down the cutting board and I'm pulling out the bleach and I'm going wild, people look at you and think you're crazy, but it's I know that there's going to be a better quality fish coming off that cutting board.
Yeah, the facts that they don't. Yeah.
Yes, and the thing is too is that we're as a community, we need to get as much support as we can just to maintain our livelihood as in the fishing industry, and as an industry, as a community. So I think that the more people that we have that enjoy eating fish and can safely enjoy fish, okay, I think that would give us a greater leg to stand on when we need support for things that need to take place for recreational and commercial fishermen as well. I mean, recreational and commercial fishing, we all need to be on the same page here. And we all need to work together to save, promote, and ensure the future of fishing, the fish we have in our waters. So if we could ensure that people aren't turned off from a bad meal, okay, and just people. So if let's just say let's just say somebody went out, let's just say a guy made dinner for his girlfriend and she liked the fish. Now she's gonna be more inclined. What are you coming home with next time? Maybe I'll go with you next time. Maybe let's go fishing.
Either way, he's getting more fishing time.
And I didn't even think about that too. But yeah, if you're a guy and your girlfriend, well, your significant other likes the fish that you bring home, they're gonna be happy to make sure you go out and get more fish.
Go back out there,
right? Go get me some more codfish. Go get me some more.
Oh, you have to stay out 12 hours. That last meal was delicious.
Yeah, do a 24-hour trip.
Do a fucking 48-hour trip.
That's right.
Forget
That's
about
right.
it.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm not gonna get mad. But the thing is that now there's gonna be more support because more people are going. You're going to have a good story as opposed to a bad story.
Yeah.
And out there right now, there's so many people that I hear more bad stories of people on a boat who, I don't want to go home with fish. My mother thinks the fish stinks. My father thinks the fish stinks.
Or they'll kill them and give them away to neighbors.
And because
they'll still be bad for the neighbors because they weren't handled correctly.
And they weren't handled correctly. But just the simple fact that a lot of people are afraid of handling fish or doing anything with fish because they've never knew how to handle it. So just being able to handle it right and just having fish that's coming home that doesn't stink the house up. Okay? For a lot of people, that's step one.
Yeah.
For making if you go home and the hallway doesn't smell like fish and the whole the whole building doesn't stink of fish, that's good. I mean, I go fishing. If I go fishing, I make sure all my neighbors, everybody, I try to give it. If I catch fish, I make sure I try to give half of it away.
It's good karma.
Well, just
some people are against it, especially the striped bass guys. There's a lot of striped bass guys that are like, this whole thing with giving away striped bass meat to neighbors is, at this point, it's ridiculous just because of the state of the striped bass. But I personally enjoy giving my neighbors food. I live in a neighborhood where people love the type of fish that I catch, and they're very appreciative of the fish that I give them. So when I am handling them, I haven't been doing the peroxide thing. I haven't been as thorough as some of the...
You don't want peroxide on the flesh,
some of the
exposed flesh. That'll ruin it.
But I've still tried to keep these fish as fresh as possible for the people I'm giving them to, and especially the ones that I'm eating. Before we wrap, because we're kind of running out of time, I would love to hear about some of the craziest stuff that you've seen while working in this profession. Like,
I see a lot of people out there right now that go out on boats and they'll fillet fish right off the bat and eat it. Okay,
so let me ask you this. Okay, so I go out on this one boat out of Sheepshead Bay, and they have an amazing galley, and you can catch your own porgy, and they'll fillet it in the back for you, and she'll cook it up for you and make a beautiful fried porgy sandwich for you. How safe is that?
Look at what you have there. Okay, you have a porgy. Okay,
I gotta pause. I don't even want to get Kathy and them involved.
No, it's not. It's not.
Let's just.
It's actually good. It's actually good you brought this up because it's actually good.
Okay.
Okay.
I just don't want. That's my favorite boat ever. I don't want.
So looking at that, if I take a porgy, okay, and if you care for your porgy correctly, okay, you fillet the porgy, okay,
like right out of the water.
Right out of the water.
Yeah.
So you take it out of the water, you take it on a fillet table. There's not much spoilage that's present, okay? You take it, you're going to put it in a batter or bread it or whatever. You're going to fry it up. Okay, you're going to fully cook that fish, okay? Realistically, that's about as close to nature as you're going to get, okay? What the difference that you might have that most people might think is weird at that point is if I fillet a fish that close to being dead, okay, you still have slow levels of glucose in the fish that hasn't degraded yet. Let's just say degraded. And the fish might taste too sweet. It might taste different than if I take it home and make it that night.
Yeah.
Okay. And
might taste better.
Depending on the species, it could taste better. I don't necessarily think any fish, me personally, I don't think any fish would taste worse, but I think that, if you do something like that, and that's a very unique environment where someone's willing to cook a fish that you just caught. I think that, certain fish, like if I did certain fish like that, like let's just say codfish, okay? Because codfish, ling, it's so delicate that if I cook it up right away, it might actually start to fall apart, okay? Because, but here's the thing, though. Even if it did, that fish is going to be so tasty, okay? If it fell apart and turned into a pile of mush, I'd still eat it because it tastes that good.
What's your favorite fish to eat?
It depends on how I'm making it, okay?
Have you ever had wahoo?
I've had wahoo.
That's my personal favorite.
I like wahoo. I'll eat just about anything. I'll eat sea robins I'll eat skate wings. You name it, I'll eat it.
Would you eat shark?
Sure, I've eaten shark.
How do you feel about the whole shark finning?
I
epidemic?
think that
how much do you think that is really damaging the oceans?
Oh, it's horrendously. The shark finning that's taking place globally. To put it mildly, it's horrendously destructive.
Not to mention totally inhumane. They drop these fish down with no fins. We all know sharks, if they can't swim, they can't breathe. They pretty much just sink to the bottom.
Right, and there's personally, like if there was a fishery for sharks where, let's just say, dogfish, where people are commercially eating dogfish.
Wish they would.
Okay, and and dogfish is good eating.
Yeah.
I'll eat dogfish.
Clean them
incredible.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
dogfish are incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, and if I were to take the fins off of those dogfish, okay, in reality, it's no different than cutting the fins off of a striped bass or a porgy that you just or anything else that you just had. And if you had a viable fishery for sharks, or now some of these species of sharks that they're doing it on, really, it's not a sustainable population. Some of these stocks are in peril, and you're really not helping the stock at all. But if you had a real fishery where all of the fish was being eaten under regulated conditions, okay, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it, because at that point, you're not wasting the fins, okay?
Even though the fins literally do nothing to the soup, right? Like, I've heard they don't even add flavor to the soup. It's this old superstition that it'll increase your sex drive or something.
I've had shark fin soup.
Yeah.
I had it once, and it has a mild flavor to it, okay? And if people like it, if I call, one of these days I always said if I took a dogfish home, I was gonna cut the fins off and I was gonna
try it, yeah,
cook it up at home. You have to dry it. In order to do it right, you have to dry it. So you'd have to put the fins in a low temperature oven. It's a lot of work, okay? But nonetheless, one of these days I said I would try it. I never did. But I personally, if the fish is being harvested properly, there's no issues with the stocks being in peril, and it was a true fishery, it was just being sold as fish, I wouldn't necessarily have an issue. It's like eating monkfish livers. If I catch monkfish and someone takes the livers out and they sell the livers, monkfish is going to the store just as in the same place the livers are going.
Yeah.
So it's not really a waste of a resource. What's taking place now globally, where people are just cutting the fins off and throwing the fish back in the water and coming home with a boat full of fins.
And where is that really happening?
That's happening in a lot of places in overseas areas.
Pacific.
The Pacific, a lot of the Pacific
Japan.
Rim. I don't know if it's necessarily Japan, but I know that there's a lot of Pacific Rim countries that have, and there's a lot of boats that are going long distances to catch these sharks and then bringing them across the ocean and then processing them and then sending them all over the world.
And all they're coming back with is just freaking crates of fins.
Crates of fins.
That's it.
And it's sad.
Do you think that the fact that overfishing in general is an issue across the entire ocean, that mixed with, or that combined with, a lack of food for sharks, do you think that increases the amount of shark attacks every year? From sharks having to come in closer and feed on whatever they can because there's not as many fish in the ocean for them to consume?
I don't know if it's necessarily as many fish in the ocean for them to consume. I think that populations of, the way bait fish are changing. I mean, if you look, we have a lot of sharks that are coming in close, and, you look at the research that was done by was it Mark Fisher? What's the guy? The guy with the vessel, the
Osearch?
Osearch,
Yeah.
Okay, Chris Fisher. Okay, so the sharks necessarily have been there. Okay, we've never, no one's really paying much attention to them. But if you look at, we've had a lot of years where there's been a lot of bunker in the water. Okay, so what's an easy, in my opinion, what's an easier prey? Giant school of bunker,
Or a surfer?
Well, but think about it. I mean, if you have, I really don't see, I don't think that personally. I don't think that sharks are necessarily want to jump all over humans. There is an article, you could find it online, Sharks and Inanimate Objects. There was a boat that was attacked by a shark up in Fortune, Nova Scotia. I have a house up in Fortune, Nova Scotia, so I know about this story. And they had the boat, the bottom of the boat painted a certain color, and this fish, from what the stories were, it was following this boat, for a while, and then it just attacked the boat. And one of the fishermen on the boat did pass away.
From that incident?
Yeah, from that incident. And there's not that many stories of sharks necessarily attacking.
Did the shark eat the guy?
I don't know, but I know.
When was this?
This was got to be maybe 60, 70 years, so a long time ago.
And how long was the boat?
It wasn't a big boat. It was like a dory, like a smaller type of boat. Yeah.
Do they know what type of shark it was?
It was a great white.
It was a white.
Yeah. So I mean, me personally, I was actually in the water once. Stupid me in Virginia Beach, and there was bait fish in the water. I didn't realize it was low light conditions, bait fish splashing, and then me. And I got out of the water because I thought, I'm going to jump in the water in April and see if I can run around in cold water. Wasn't the brightest of ideas until I realized, and then somebody took a picture of me coming out of the water from the hotel, and in the back of the picture there you saw a fin in the water. Wow. And I was like, wow. That was, once I was in the water, and I was just like, I look around, I'm standing, and I got to smell the bunker.
You got the feel.
And I'm like, bunker, low light conditions, along the shore, me.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to change this scenario and get out of it. It's time to get out of the water.
All right. Last question. How did Hurricane Sandy change everything for us in New York City?
Speaking with fishermen in the area, it was so powerful. Wrecks were moved. Wrecks were covered up. Wrecks were exposed. There were wrecks that haven't been seen, and that people didn't know, they couldn't find them for 50 years. Okay, and you look at the damage that took place in Jamaica Bay. Let's just look at Jamaica Bay, for instance. Okay, you had washing machines floating out into the bay. Okay, cars floating out. You name it, it was in the bay. And when you look at the bay as a means of an estuary where juvenile fish, young of the year fish, are going to spend a large portion of their life. And now that whole ecosystem is turned upside down. And then the same thing on the ocean side as well. Okay, and you look at, you talk to captains up and down the East Coast, and they'll all tell you blue fishing was never the same after Hurricane Sandy. A lot of fishing was never the same after Hurricane Sandy.
The bluefish just showed back up this year. They were gone for years.
And when the bluefish do show up, they show up for a week. Okay, so you go out and you look at the days of when they're here. They're here for a short period of time in the spring, and they're all big. Okay, and then they're gone, and then they're hanging out off of Block Island. So you look at 20 years ago, you had bluefish here from April to November, and you can go out pretty much whenever you wanted, and you got a good chance of doing okay with bluefish. And that's just one species. Okay, so you start looking at how it started changing the environment. Okay, so let's just say that when that storm came, any of the fish that you had, the eggs are in the water, that depending on where they were, if you start destroying that year class for a species, that has an impact. And then that impact goes into the next year and the next year. And if a species doesn't recover, or if it changes the environment where other species wind up taking its place, that has an impact. That ripple effect just goes on. And things really haven't been the same fishing-wise since then. I mean, you look at people talking about how the Long Island Sound is getting a lot more sea bass. Okay, big sea bass. And, people say that wasn't really taking place for many years, and it's a new phenomenon. And you say to yourself, well, what happened? Okay, are we getting, you look at climate change and other factors. So, if the water temperature changes a degree, combine that with a catastrophic storm, and things change, and things right now are changing, and I don't think we really know what the right decisions are in terms of looking at these stocks and what the future is, and what fish might be here today that could be gone tomorrow. So in a lot of ways, fisheries managers from many agencies are, there's a lot of people that don't really like them, don't really like the decisions that they're making. But looking at it from a science-based perspective, okay, the decisions that they're making are incredibly difficult decisions, okay? And with an environment and, a climate that's in flux, making those science-based decisions, they're doing the best that they can with the information that's in front of them. And, I think that it's right now it's hard for these, many of these agencies to make these decisions, because no matter what they do, they're in a ways they're always wrong, and it's not that they're wrong because they don't know what they're doing, and they're trying to destroy the world. I think it's just they're trying to do the best with the information that they're given under a tremendous amount of pressure with an ecosystem that is in constant change. I mean, I look at water runoff, and you look at the increase in the population in the tri-state area. Where is all of this sewage water going? Where's the fresh water that's being released going? I mean, you have more of this, more of that, more sludge, more septic systems that are leaching into the local waterways, especially out on Long Island and Jersey, where, you don't really have sewer systems. But you have a lot of estuaries and bays, Great South Bay, Mauritius, Shinnecock, Peconics. You go to Jersey, you have the whole Raritan Bay ecosystem.
Yeah.
Go down the shore, you have all your barrier islands and all of the bays that are there. So you sit there and you say to yourself, it's very difficult, and the population increases, pollution increases, this increases, that increases. But, the factors that make it difficult to allow for an increase in a population, okay, they're increasing in number. And it's in a lot of people, but yet we all want more fish.
Yep.
But yet what's actually helping destroy the fish is increasing exponentially, and there's really not much being done to mitigate those factors. Okay, we can blame overfishing, this, that, but if you're not allowing the fish to adequately reproduce and giving them an environment to reproduce, you really can't expect to have, that many fish, or the fish that you should be having.
Yeah.
So I think that, we really need to start taking a look at pollution and the impact that we're having on the environment, and take a stronger approach to minimizing runoff, septic systems, sewer systems, population increase in the city of New York. How many millions of people extra we have in a city that we didn't have 30 years ago? Where's everybody flushing a toilet and throwing out garbage and doing this and doing that? Where is that waste going, and what impact is that having on our coastal ecosystems? So you could argue one way or another that waters were cleaner now than they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's true. Okay, waters aren't necessarily cleaner, but at the same token, you have more people the greater the population, the greater stresses that are being put upon the ecosystem to perform.
No matter how clean the water is.
You're looking for an ecosystem to perform in an environment that's constantly becoming more difficult to perform in. And I think that, how do you fix that? That's a conversation for another day.
And that's what I was going to say. I think we're going to have to follow up with the second episode to this and talk more about solutions and what you think potential solutions are to these problems and issues that we've discussed tonight. I thank you so much for coming through tonight and
thank
sharing
you for the
your
opportunity.
Wealth of
it was a
knowledge.
very, very unique opportunity to be able to be here tonight and to share information. I mean, there's a lot more information that
we'd love to
I'd
have
like
you
to
back,
go
man.
into, and
Definitely.
maybe in the future we could do a presentation where with slides and have an audience. And
we have a ton of we have 4 meetings every month for our 4 chapters of the club. We have a chapter in Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and Manhattan. So I would love to have you come to the next Brooklyn one.
So maybe sponsor other events outside of that just to get the message, because the more people that know, the more people that are educated on how to properly handle, catch, and deal with their fish.
Yeah.
And then we can start getting into other things like histamines and things that can go wrong, and how to mitigate those factors and strategies and do that. And if you could just turn people on to caring for fish and subsequently being able to eat better fish and higher quality fish, okay, having a greater fan base, okay, never hurt anybody.
Agreed.
Never hurt anybody at all.
Definitely. Thank you, Eugene.
All right, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll figure out something soon for
Part 2.
Some future
Solutions.
educational opportunities.
Definitely.
All righty.
Thank you to all of our listeners, everybody who's donated to our GoFundMe campaign to keep the podcast going. Please visit brooklynfishingclub.com for more info on becoming a member. One of our newest benefits is that we'll be releasing a new podcast episode to members only every month moving forward. This episode is brought to you by The Lost Lady, a nautical rum bar located at 171 Avenue C between 10th and 11th Street in Manhattan. They serve up amazing food, tacos, great drinks. They have food specials 7 days a week, and the kitchen is open late. And one of our oldest club members, Pete, is the owner of the bar. So stop by, say hello, mention that you're with the Brooklyn Fishing Club, probably get a free drink. Check them out at Instagram at The Lost Lady NYC. Once again, thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. We'll be back at you as soon as possible with another episode of the Brooklyn Fishing Club podcast.